really think it is so beneficial. So we talked a little bit earlier about connecting with negative thoughts that have happened throughout. And so this doesn't necessarily have to be long-term complex trauma. And it can be a one-time thing. But what I would say about EMDR is that it is very individualized, but very structured. And so EMDR in and of itself, when, we talk about the specifics of EMDR, there's 8 phases of treatment. And essentially, if you are going to go through EMDR treatment, you are going to, and your therapist is going to walk you through having all 8 phases of that treatment. So it starts with history taking and getting to know somebody, just as if any other therapy session would and should, to really get the history and start working on forming a connection and really understanding what's going on in different ways. And then moving into resourcing, which is learning different grounding techniques. Some of the basics that I teach, and I think many therapists teach, are the butterfly hug, calm space, things like that are just very instrumental in being able to help yourself ground and know that you have those skills in order to be able to help yourself later on. So we do resourcing early on, because if people are coming in with things that tend to upset them or really increase their response to something, as in like a survival response. So we see sometimes their anxiety shoots, their nervous system kind of goes, a little wonky. We want them to have the skills that they need in order to settle that down, balance, and reground themselves. So in that way, we don't just jump into what's the trauma. There's a little bit of a building process. And I always tell people in my therapy sessions, you can tell me as much or as little as you are able to and you feel comfortable to, especially early on, because I don't want you to leave the office feeling worse and having symptoms or things that are going to impact you for the rest of the day or the rest of the week, right? So I want you to leave feeling okay and definitely not worse than when you showed up, right? So as we, move in EMDR, what I will say about EMDR and the way that I explain it, and this is my own personal analogy, okay? And I think that there's probably a gazillion EMDR therapists out there that we all come up with like our own little ways of like explaining things to people and the ways that it makes sense to us. And also, for everybody's knowledge, anybody who is completely EMDR trained also had to go through EMDR themselves. So it is an experiential training. We learn in the sense that we are taught things, and we know the educational and the biology and the information, and then we watch. Usually is you watch somebody do the different parts, and then you do them, and you do them in a way as a trainer, and you also do them as a client. And so that process for anybody, thinking about EMDR is that, we as the therapist also have some experience ourselves in actually going through the process, which I think is very useful. So thinking about this is my own way of explaining it. So if you take your hands and if you think about the things that have happened in your life that are still impacting you, okay? And it's all right here, right? So in this way, if I do this and I cover my face, it is very hard for me to see and function and know what's going on, right? This is right here. It's always right here. And so the best way for me to explain how EMDR works and functions is that with this sitting right here, it's very emotionally draining and exhausting, right? We work so hard to be functional around all of it that when we get into processing, what starts to happen is this. We start to pull these things that are there in our face away, right? And so if I could reach up, to the corner of my ceiling or whatever, we can stretch that out. And now I can look and I can see these things. They're up here still. I didn't change them. We didn't erase them. We didn't destroy them. They're still there, but they're there in a way that is not so emotionally draining, distressing, exhausting. We look at them and we can say, oh, yeah, I remember, I see it, it's still there. I can pull it in if I want to, but it's not controlling me. It's not consuming me anymore. And so the thing with this is that we can do this with almost everything, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a big, huge trauma that happened. It can be something that was a little thing that we remember happening when we were 7 years old in second grade, and this memory still haunts us for whatever reason, and it still impacts the way that we feel about ourselves in some reason, or for some reason. And we can go back, work on that memory, work on picturing those things, doing different bilateral stimulation. Eye movement is the most researched out there for EMDR, but there are also other mechanisms and ways of doing that. Some of the mainstream, I don't know if anybody out there is a Grey's Anatomy watcher. I watched Grey's Anatomy for a long time.
I was going to bring that up, Joe.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up.
And so I'll tell you, like, Grey's Anatomy did a pretty good job with that. Like, they really did. It was with what they were using and the actual like process of everything. They did a pretty good remake of what you might actually see in a therapist's office. I generally still do old school hand movements, and I have most of my people doing eye movements, watching my fingers. For me personally, as a therapist, I feel more connected and I feel like I can read their body language and I am more attuned to where they are and what's going on. But we also have things out there. I have I don't know exactly. I have a specific brand that's called TheraTappers, which are, they're just little oval things that two of them, and I call them buzzies for kids. They just vibrate back and forth. It's another form of bilateral stimulation. And we do different things with tapping. We also have audio, so different things that will do tones back and forth in the ears. Or there's actually quite a few things out there, mechanisms and different things that are being used and tried out.
Yeah.
What thoughts or questions do you have?
Yeah. So for anybody who obviously can't see, and doesn't know what we're talking about with Grey's Anatomy, it's like a horizontal stick with lights that go down it, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. A light bar that will have different, and a lot of them have different colored lights that will go from one side to another. So you're essentially kind of watching a running light back and forth.
And then, okay. So, I mean, this is very complicated as well. So I'm trying to see how I could. So if somebody wanted to go to therapy, how would they qualify to use this? Like, is it just PTSD or is it something else that like a therapist would use it for?
I use it for all sorts of things. And I
Oh,
think
okay.
that most EMDR therapists would tell you that they use it for all sorts of things too, that it does not need to be used with somebody who just specifically has a PTSD diagnosis. It is very commonly used with PTSD, but I use it for anxiety, I use it for depression, I use it for, I mean, almost anything.
Okay.
There,
So
you know,
how would somebody know that they're like that they should try it?
um, I would say if you're open to it and you think that you have stuff that is still bothering you, whether it's something that happened a long time ago or, more recently, or there was a significant thing that happened, a traumatic experience, um, really, if you've also tried other therapies that have not worked, I would suggest trying EMDR. I've seen a bunch of people in my practice that have been in therapy for different reasons, multiple time lengths. And and I say, well, let's do something different. Let's do something that is going to help connect some different things. Um, I will explain a little bit because this seems very weird, right? When you first hear about EMDR, you think that is crazy. And I will also confirm that when I even went to go get EMDR trained, I was like, oh wow, this is interesting. And what I want people to understand is that if we go to a place of natural healing, right? We know, and if you are familiar with sleep phases, okay? So let's talk about REM sleep. REM sleep stands for rapid eye movement. So when we are in REM sleep, we are in our dream state of sleep. And at that point, when we're in that state, our eyes are darting from corner to corner, back and forth, while we are sleeping, while we are dreaming. This process is our brain's natural way of organizing information and putting it away, putting it in places where it's going to be useful, where we can recall, where it's needed. And in that organization, the eyes bouncing back and forth is our natural way of doing this. So EMDR really was founded um, in a very natural sense where um, Dr. Shapiro, who was the founder of this, was noticing that when she moved her eyes back and forth, thinking about something distressing that had happened, she felt better. So, this is a very, when we talk about natural and natural healing, it really doesn't get a whole lot more natural than this. This is a way for the body to really be able to heal and help itself. Now, I'm not recommending that people just go out and start darting their eyes back and forth, okay? So let's understand that, because I think that you want to learn and you want to be informed and you want to have somebody who has been trained help you along this journey, okay? So is it a natural way of helping ourselves and healing? Yes. Should we just do it kind of willy-nilly all on our own and not really understand? No, I would not recommend that.
I feel like you might have to come on in another episode to talk about EMDR like specifically, because I
Mhm.
wanted to